Since the return of our troops from Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, thousands of our soldiers began complaining of strange symptoms. The Pentagon immediately denounced the possibility of a physical illness and began diagnosing Gulf War veterans with psychiatric disorders. For the past 6 years, the Pentagon has attempted to confuse the American public with the issue of whether or not there is a Gulf War illness. This video will show you that not only is the illness real, but it is a deadly disease. This disease is contagious, affecting spouses and children of Gulf War veterans. It's a deceptive disease, an illness that presents itself as chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, neuromuscular diseases, and now autoimmune diseases. The Gulf War veterans now present their side of the story. America, this disease is no longer contained within the military. Every American is now at risk. We do not have all the answers, but we do have enough documentation and evidence to prove that the United States government has withheld life-saving treatment from our military, and they've withheld life-saving information from our medical community. The United States government has known of the seriousness and the contagiousness of this disease since 1993. The Gulf War veterans ask for nothing more than medical treatment and the accountability of those who have withheld this information. This program will examine the documents and evidence so that you can make your decision on whether or not the Gulf War illness is fact or fiction.
Hello, my name is Joyce Riley. I love my God, I love my country, and I love my fellow man. The story that you're about to hear today is not the most important story of the 20th century. It's the most important story of America's history. I served as a flight nurse aboard a C-130 aircraft during Operation Desert Storm. I did not go to the theater of operations in Saudi Arabia or Iraq, but I became ill. I became ill with a disease, a demyelinating disease. I was admitted to a hospital. I was severely ill in 1991. But this is not about my story. It is about the story of thousands and thousands of America's servicemen. You see, the Gulf War illness is real. There are many suffering and many dying. What you will hear today is the Gulf War veteran side of the story, not the side of the story that the Department of Defense or the CIA or Veterans Affairs would like for you to know. Experimentation on the American people and the American military is not something that is new. It has been going on for years. The Gulf War experiment is just an extension of those previous experiments. The Gulf War veterans, the victims of Agent Orange, the mustard gas victims, all of those that have suffered and died in experiments as unwitting candidates are represented by thousands and thousands of people you never see. We want the experiment stopped, not only on the Gulf War veterans. We want the experiment stopped not only on the military, but on all Americans. One such experiment was the Tuskegee experiment, where 399 black men who had syphilis were allowed to continue with the disease, even though there was a treatment available. Quoting from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Friday, February 21st of 1997, it states, "The government withheld treatment from 399 men with syphilis so they could study how it spreads and kills." It was not just the 399 black men who were affected. It was their family members, their spouses who got the disease, and their children who were born with possibly congenital deformities. Syphilis is a contagious disease. Our question now is how much of the syphilis that now exists is represented by those that were not treated from 1932 to 1972. In 1977, we became aware of other experiments, such as those done by the CIA. The CIA conducted experiments on the American people without their permission. There were two main projects entitled MK Ultra and MK Naomi. We now have declassified documents showing the existence of these projects and the fact that unwitting Americans were exposed to both psychedelic drugs and biological agents without their permission. The CIA experimented on 80 institutions in the United States. Those people were not told they were being experimented upon, nor were they told what had happened to them. These are the experiments we want stopped on the American people. In 1977, a Senate report was released entitled Biological Testing Involving Human Subjects by the Department of Defense. Not only does it include MK-Ultra and declassified documents from MK Naomi, but it also included experiments done on the unwitting American public with biological warfare agents in open-air testing. The opening statement of Senator Kennedy states that for the first time we have learned the extent of the Department of Defense's activities in biological warfare. Those experiments that were done on the unwitting members of the civilian population. They were the test subjects. Experiments included the following: the use of live organisms in the New York subway system, the use of live organisms which we know can infect human beings in the Mechanicsburg, Kittatinny, and Tuscarora tunnels on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. Also utilized in the experiment was the coast of San Francisco, where aerosolized bacteria was placed in the water, allowed to disperse throughout the community, and measurements were made as to how far inland the bacteria traveled. It traveled over 50 miles. The report states there were deaths and there were illnesses as a result of this experiment. In Calhoun County, Alabama, the cases of pneumonia tripled during an experiment with the biological weapons using open-air testing. These experiments were done all the way from Central Alaska in 1965 to Key West, Florida in 1952, Oahu, Hawaii in 1968, and off the coast of California in 1966. Biological agents were tested in a bus terminal in Washington, D.C. in 1949. There were three types of tests done on the unwitting American public. Those were anti-personnel test on man, anti-crop, and anti-animal test. One of the most disconcerting is the discovery of the fact that the United States had developed the unique capacity of growing and infecting mosquitoes with viral agents. The question arises, how much of our disease is now as a result of the experiments done on the unwitting American public? The world believed that it had learned its lesson from the Holocaust during World War II. The Nuremberg Code, as a result of the Nuremberg trials, was adopted. However, it now appears that in many of the experiments done on not only the American military, but the American public in general, the United States government and the CIA, Department of Defense, have violated the #1 rule of the Nuremberg Code. The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. Not only was this violated on the civilian population, but during military experiments throughout military history, up through and especially during the Persian Gulf War. Senate Report 103-97 was released on December 8th of 1994 with Senator Jay Rockefeller's committee. The important aspect of this is the very first statement. During the last 50 years, hundreds of thousands of military personnel have been involved in human experimentation and other intentional exposures conducted by the Department of Defense, often without a service member's knowledge or consent. This document also discusses pyridostigmine bromide, the anti-nerve agent pills given to our troops. It also discusses Clostridium botulinum and the anthrax vaccination. The Nuremberg Code was violated with respect to the immunizations and the pills that our troops received. A Department of Defense appropriation document of the year 1969 for 1970 states the following: that they would, within 5 to 10 years, develop a synthetic biological agent, an agent that does not naturally exist and for which no natural immunity could have been acquired. One has to ask why the Department of Defense needed a biological agent to which it would be refractory or damaging to the immunological and therapeutic processes upon which we depend to maintain our relative freedom from infectious disease. This can be found on page 129 of the appropriation hearings. It is highly controversial, and there are many who believe such research should not be undertaken lest it lead to yet another method of massive killing of large populations. Shortly after the Persian Gulf War in 1992, troops began complaining of symptoms, very diverse symptoms, such as joint pain, rash, swollen lymph glands, night sweats, headaches, a form of depression. They went to their facilities for treatment and were told they had a psychiatric problem. Many of them sought medical treatment, to which they were given none. Up to 1997 now, we find that the VA system has not acknowledged a Gulf War illness. The Department of Defense has not acknowledged a Gulf War illness, and therefore our troops, the majority of them, are being treated with psychotropic drugs: Prozac, Zoloft, Halcyon, Busbar, Wellbutrin, and Trazodone. How could we have sent the best and the brightest to fight for the United States military? They were responsible for thousands of lives. They made very significant decisions. And now we bring them back here, give them 2 days of testing, and tell them they have a mental problem. It's not correct, it's not right that we should allow our military to be treated in such a fashion. Even Senator Don Regal stated that if there is any mental problem, it's over at the Defense Department. It is not with our military. Soon we began to see news releases stating that the Gulf War veterans had mental problems. The Pentagon says there is no Gulf War illness. Well, there were sick troops, and they were getting sicker.
Investigations began, and Senator Don Regal came forward with this report dated May 25th of 1994. The report was entitled, U.S. Chemical and Biological Warfare-Related Dual-Use Exports to Iraq and Their Possible Impact on the Health Consequences of the Persian Gulf War. This report was probably the most significant finding ever released by the U.S. government with respect to the Persian Gulf War. Many of the Gulf War veterans now requesting this document are being told it is no longer available. After reading this report, these findings became evident. Number one, the Banking Committee uncovered a large body of evidence linking the symptoms of the syndrome to the exposure of Gulf War participants to chemical and biological warfare agents. Number two, a number of the veterans who initially exhibited these symptoms have died since returning from the Gulf. Number three, in detailed interviews conducted of 400 Gulf War veterans, it has been learned that over 3/4 of their spouses complain that they have begun to suffer from many of the same debilitating symptoms. Number four, it was astonishing to find that our own government had licensed a shipment of those very things to Saddam Hussein, and many of them going directly to military units. There was no subterfuge. They were going right into his war production system. Then, of course, when we decided the necessity of going to war with Iraq, we had our own troops suddenly facing weapons that we had helped develop by providing critical items to them.
Listed in the Regal report are the biological agents that were sold to Saddam Hussein. These are the unclassified biological agents. They were sold by the American Type Culture Collection. They list the batch numbers and dates that they were sold to the Iraqi Atomic Energy Commission. Senator Don Regal spoke to the floor of the Senate on February 9th of 1994 regarding the points just made. Biologicals and chemicals were used. Our troops are sick. The disease is communicable, and we sold the biological and chemical agents to Saddam Hussein. A press release was issued February 9th of 1994, but not carried in most of the national media, in which those points were made. He did not stop there and also sent a letter to the Honorable William Perry, Secretary of the Department of Defense, in which he informed him of that information, especially of the fact that now they were finding that spouses and children were now being infected with this disease. There was no response from the Department of Defense. Today we continue with multiple hearings, multiple congressional investigations, and no more results.
On January 29, 1997, General Norman Schwarzkopf testified before the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee on Gulf War illnesses. It's important to note that General Schwarzkopf was not sworn in. That is, he was not required to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The panel was chaired by Senator Arlen Specter, and it was co-chaired by Senator Jay Rockefeller. Ben Nighthorse Campbell from the state of Colorado was also present, as was Senator Frank Murkowski from the state of Alaska. Paul Wellstone was another senator that attended. As General Schwarzkopf began his testimony, he read from a prepared statement addressing some of the issues that have been the subject of controversy in the years since the end of hostilities in Iraq. The question of whether or not our troops were exposed to chemical or biological agents during their service in the Gulf was addressed when General Schwarzkopf made the following comment.
I never received, before, during, or after hostilities, any report of Iraqi use of chemical weapons, nor the discovery of or destruction of Iraqi chemical weapons.
Later on in his testimony, he also made the following comment in regard to chemical and biological exposure.
We never had a single symptom shown by any of our troop of known symptoms of any chemical contamination, and I never received a single report of the Iraqi use of chemical.
This is a page from the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Logbook. The NBC logbook was reviewed by General Schwarzkopf on a daily basis, and this page comes from the 3rd of March, 1991. At 15:15 hours, it states that Lieutenant Colonel Wade advised that Colonel Dunn has confirmed that the soldier of the 3rd Armored Division does have blisters characteristic of H mustard chemical agent on his upper and lower left arm. Further down the page, at 18:10 hours, it says, Arsent advised that chemical casualty happened on the afternoon of 28 February. This page of the NBC logbook is dated the 27th of February, 1991. At the time of 15:45 hours, it reads, Lieutenant Colonel Hilliard called with questions about SYNCENT message, that's Commander-in-Chief Central Command, General Schwarzkopf. Subject, Commander's guidance for disposition of captured chemical and biological munitions. Further down the page at 1800 hours it reads, they feel destruction of small quantities using field method is okay. Bulk destruction, not defined, is not approved because it may have great international implications. A focal point of the ongoing debate is the issue of the Camisea bunker complex. The destruction of Camisea was not even discussed until June of 1996, and when it was brought up by Senator Specter, General Schwarzkopf stated the following.
As I stated, the first time I ever heard of Camisea was in 1996 when it was first announced by the Department of Defense, and nobody was more surprised than I was.
However, a little bit later in his testimony, General Schwarzkopf apparently contradicted himself when he said the following.
I remember General Franks came to me, and I assume it was Camisea he was talking about at the time, because it was about the same time frame, and talked about this huge ammunition dump that they had found with literally tons and tons and tons of ammunition in it, and there was no way they could possibly retrograde it, and I challenged him on that, and he convinced me that no, they couldn't retrograde it, and therefore they were going to destroy it in place. I said, fine. Now that's Camisea. From what I heard about the size of the bunker that Franks was talking about and the others that they blew up, these were huge bunkers with crates and crates and crates and crates of ammunition in them, and I can only assume that they either didn't recognize them or didn't see them at the time. We were under pressure to withdraw, and under the pressures of withdrawal, we did destroy everything we could so that the Iraqis couldn't fall back in on it and use it in some other war against us.
General Schwarzkopf just stated that he was concerned about the Iraqis regaining control of the munitions that were contained inside of the Camisea ammunition depot. However, in the past year, several individuals have come forward with some other reasons why this bunker complex was destroyed.
I'm Dan Topolsky. I was the Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Defense NCO for B Company, 37th Engineer Battalion. I was on the Camisea bunker complex mission.
Sergeant Topolsky was one of the nuclear, biological, and chemical non-commissioned officers in charge of identifying munitions at the Camisea bunker complex in Iraq. This complex consisted of over 100 bunkers and 49 warehouses, each the size of a football field. And he feels that he and his men were exposed to chemical and biologicals when they were ordered to blow it up. Here's how he felt when he entered this complex.
I felt betrayed. I felt like we had been sold out for dollars when I saw what I saw inside those bunkers.
Why would Sergeant Topolsky feel betrayed? What was it that he saw when he and the others from the 37th Engineer Battalion entered those bunkers? General Schwarzkopf discussed how the enemy identifies their munitions in his testimony when he said the following.
even though I had 40-some years in military service, if you were to bring in a bunch of ammunition and pile it up in front of me, and one of them was a 122-millimeter rocket with chemicals in it, I would not be able to tell you that that had chemicals in it, particularly if it was an Iraqi rocket with Arabic writing on it or something of the sort. We identify ours when we had them in a very specific way by color coding. I don't have the slightest idea what the Arabs did.
General Schwarzkopf stated that we identified ours when we had them by color coding. As you can see, the colored bands on these munitions indicate that there were chemical and biological munitions inside these bunkers at Camisea. According to Sergeant Topolsky, the yellow or purple bands indicate chemical munitions, where the green bands indicate biological munitions. Schwarzkopf also indicated that he could not identify munitions, particularly if they had Iraqi markings on them. You'll also note that the markings on these munitions are plainly written in English, and they indicated that these munitions were supplied to Iraq by countries like Jordan, Middlesex, England, the Soviet Union, or Russia, as well as the United States of America. According to the 1972 Geneva Convention, weapons of mass destruction are illegal. Therefore, according to Sergeant Dan Topolsky, it is very likely that these munitions were destroyed not so much to prevent Saddam Hussein from regaining control of them, but rather to destroy the evidence of these countries breaking international law. When destroying weapons like these, there's always a concern for the safety of the troops. Senator Specter's first question to General Schwarzkopf was whether or not those involved in the demolition of Camisea wore protective clothing, or MOP gear.
Yeah, Senator, the answer to that is yes. We had a standard operating procedure that anybody that was involved in that kind of a destruction effort, they wore their MOP gear when they were in the process of doing that. They wore their overgarments, they wore their masks, and then they tested the area with devices before they took their masks off and their overgarments off, just to make sure that there wasn't anything there.
The 37th Engineer Battalion, way back in the air campaign, was ordered by our battalion commander not to wear our protective overgarments unless specifically told to do so. My company pretty much ignored that order because my company commander supported me when I said that that was dead wrong, and he's going to wind up with a dead company if he listens to it. Now, a lot of the other companies in the battalion didn't do that. When the battalion commander noticed that we were wearing our suits anyways, regardless of what he said, he went ahead and extended the life on them. Said, oh, they'll just last forever now, when they would have wore out 2 weeks later.
On April 17, 1997, General Colin Powell testified before the same Senate panel, and as was the case with General Schwarzkopf, he was not required to take an oath to tell the truth. In regard to the use of the chemical MOP suits, he said the following.
We used protective overgarments, boots, masks. I don't think you have seen a single battle scene from the Desert Storm War where our troops were not in MOP gear.
That's a lie.
Does it hurt you to say that's a lie?
It does. I mean, it does for me to call someone of his stature, telling him that he's lying. I had the utmost respect for him.
Sergeant Kevin Wright of the United States Marine Corps and Sergeant Dan Topolsky from the United States Army both have stated that they were not protected from chemical or biological exposure by using protective clothing, directly contradicting Generals Powell and Schwarzkopf. Who is telling the truth?
We used protective overgarments, boots, masks. I don't think you have seen a single battle scene from the Desert Storm War where our troops were not in MOP gear.
We had a standard operating procedure that anybody that was involved in that kind of a destruction effort, they wore their MOP gear when they were in the process of doing that. They wore their overgarments, they wore their masks, and then they tested the area with devices before they took their masks off and their overgarments off, just to make sure that there wasn't anything there.
Exposure to chemical or biological weapons while serving in the Gulf is not the only possible source of contamination. The inoculations that were given to our troops have also come into question. When asked about the vaccines, whether for anthrax or botulism, General Schwarzkopf made the following statement.
The botulism, as I understand it, when we first went over there was no antitoxin. And the antitoxin that was eventually developed and given to us what was one that was experimental, was not approved by the FDA. It was for that reason that I insisted that any troop that was going to be given this botulism, first of all, be explained what it is and then sign a statement as to the fact that he understood this and agreed to take it. And if he didn't sign the statement, he didn't have to take the botulism antitoxin. I left it up to him because I knew it was not an FDA-approved antitoxin.
General Schwarzkopf has just indicated that the botulism vaccine was strictly voluntary and no troops were forced to take it. However, according to Senate Report 103-97, dated December 8th of 1994, on page 21, it states, based on interviews with 150 Persian Gulf War veterans by committee staff, 88% of those who said they'd received a botulism vaccine were told they had no choice. And to compound the question of integrity, why is it that none of the members that sat before General Schwarzkopf questioned him on this, especially since this Senate report was chaired by John Rockefeller? And also included on that panel in 1994 was Ben Nighthorse Campbell, Arlen Specter, and Frank Murkowski. These individuals sat on the panel in 1994 and had prior knowledge that General Schwarzkopf was being less than forthright with his information. Why then did they not cross-examine him and bring this issue to light? These are the individuals who are charged with the responsibility of leaving no stone unturned to get to the truth of the Gulf War illness. And yet none of them were willing to cross-examine General Schwarzkopf. Other members of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee investigating the Gulf War illness included Senator Tim Hutchinson from Arkansas, Senator Bob Graham from Florida, and Senator Patty Murray from the state of Washington. As mentioned, many of these senators had access to information that could have been beneficial in conducting this investigation. But Senators Murray and Nighthorse Campbell had an extra advantage. They sat on this committee that was chaired by Senator Donald Regal in 1994. This Senate report, numbered Senate Hearing 103-900, is commonly known as the Regal Report. It contains over 550 pages of evidence, documents, and testimony that states the following. 1. Biological and chemical weapons were used. 2. Our troops are not just sick, they're dying. 3. The disease is communicable. And 4. The United States knowingly sold biologicals to Iraq. This information has been available to all senators, as well as the general public. And yet,
the guidance from the President is clear, and I quote, I want to assure all of you that we will leave no stone unturned in our efforts to investigate Gulf War illnesses and to provide our Gulf War veterans with the medical care they need. There are mysteries still unanswered, and we must do more. I will make that my business to leave no stone unturned.
Some of the men and women who served under my command during the Gulf War are sick, and I believe we should leave no stone unturned and do everything we possibly can to seek cures for these veterans so that they may return to full and productive lives. They deserve nothing less.
My name is Kevin Wright. I'm a sergeant retired from Marine Corps, and I was tasked as Central Command Joint Visitors Bureau in the region of Saudi Arabia, Dhahran, Kuwait, and Iraq. I can't understand. My question is why, General Schwarzkopf, would you sit there and say that your main priority is the welfare of your troops? And your troops are sick. We're very sick. And you're going to sit there and not stand up and help us? I thought of you as a gentleman. I cannot think of you more than anything but a traitor for doing this and not speaking out to help your people. General Schwarzkopf, I was your bodyguard. My job was to protect you. And I'm sick, and why can't you protect us? It's not right, and you know it.
It has been 6 years. Our troops are still sick. They are still dying. They have not been treated. Unfortunately, the tiniest victims are those of the children, those that now must suffer a lifelong debilitating disease. One of those diseases found among the children of Gulf War veterans is Goldenhar. Goldenhar syndrome is the absence of arms or legs, a deformed left eye, left shoulder. This disease is found in much higher proportion in Gulf War veterans. Sergeant Paul Hansen's son Jace was born without arms and without legs. He is a victim of Goldenhar syndrome. There are many other types of deformities we're finding among Gulf War veterans' children: heart deformities, organ deformities, and especially the presence of rashes among many of the children of Gulf War veterans. Nation magazine stated in January of 1995 that studies show of 67% of the babies born to affected Desert Shield, Desert Storm vets have birth defects. The presence of birth defects, the presence of birth problems is very high among Gulf War veterans' children. A recent study that came from the Department of Defense showed that there was no higher incidence in birth defects among Gulf War veterans' children. However, we believe that those figures are skewed. Only active duty military were utilized for this study. No Guard, no reservist. So therefore, only those babies that were born in DOD facilities were utilized for this study. We feel that it is not accurate and does not include the broad spectrum of the military. Millions and millions of dollars have been spent on Gulf War research. Millions of dollars were spent on the Presidential Advisory Commission. But what is being spent on actual treatment? Most Gulf War veterans at the VA facilities report they have not received treatment. Nearly all the Gulf War veterans treated in a VA facility report that either they were the same when they left or they were worse when they exited the facility. The Gulf War veterans are not getting treatment at the VA. They are treated symptomatically with Prozac and psychotropic drugs for the head, Tagamet for their stomach, and Motrin for their joint pain. It is time that millions and millions of dollars of money be put toward actual treatment of Gulf War veterans and not just research. The major news media does not cover the real Gulf War illness. It only tells you about rashes and joint pain. You don't see those that have suffered and died. Scott Siefken is one of America's heroes. He died and America didn't know why. His parents have asked that we tell you Scott's story. Scott lived in Plainfield, Iowa. He was from a military family. They were very patriotic. Scott served in the National Guard and in the Army. He returned from the Persian Gulf and began to experience a rash. Shortly after, he was treated by the VA facility that told him that he would need a very extensive procedure. They advised that his rash had become so severe that they would need to remove all of his skin. In actuality, he underwent a procedure that removed 99% of his skin. It is very difficult to look at Scott's picture. Scott suffered terribly. This is a young man whose only crime was loving his country and serving his country. They removed all of Scott's skin, and unfortunately, he died 7 weeks after this photo was taken. His family asked that this picture be used because there are thousands of others whose lives now hang in the balance. It is our hope that you will understand this disease is not just joint pain. It is not just rashes, but it can be a very deadly disease. Scott's only son was born 2 weeks after he died. His goal is to build a rocket ship to go get Daddy and bring him back so the family will stop crying. Scott's story is one of many. Is there a treatment for this disease? We believe so. We believe that doxycycline, a very plain, generic, broad-spectrum tetracycline antibiotic, is effective in treating many of the Gulf War illnesses. One of those agents is a microorganism called Mycoplasma incognitus. It has been identified at the MD Anderson Cancer Center and appears to be a biological warfare agent. Dr. Garth and Dr. Nancy Nicholson have found that doxycycline is effective in treating this disorder, especially when used early.
This chronic infectious agent is known as a mycoplasma.
Mycoplasmas are like tiny bacteria without a cell wall. The Nicholsons say the mycoplasma they found appears to be genetically engineered to give it a protein shell from a virus, the AIDS virus.
It's a very unusual agent. It has very unusual genes associated with it that normally should not be there. Therefore, we think that it might be a biological weapon that was released during Operation Desert Storm.
a biological weapon. The Nicholsons believe this type of mycoplasma is contagious, and it crosses the species barrier. Coming from a scientist who's published over 400 papers and was a leading researcher at the MD Anderson Cancer Center at the Department of Tumor Biology, this statement is horrifying.
You need continual exposure to an infected individual, but it will slowly penetrate the population at large.
Doctors Garth and Nancy Nicholson discovered an unusual mycoplasma that does not naturally occur in the blood of many sick Gulf War veterans. They started testing a possible treatment, doxycycline, and they found that 2/3 of veterans eventually recovered.
Yes, it is treatable, and our medical publications on this show that patients respond to at least 4 different antibiotics.
I was treated with doxycycline, and I was positive for the Mycoplasma incognitus. The Gulf War veterans cannot get doxycycline. It is very difficult to convince physicians for the need of doxycycline when the Pentagon says there is no Gulf War illness. And as a result, Gulf War veterans have been forced to go to animal feed stores where they have purchased tetracycline for animals, tetracycline for cattle and for swine. What a horrible, horrible situation it is to consider that our military, who was willing to die on foreign soil, now must suffer. They must go to Mexico and buy the doxycycline over the border. They must order it from overseas, or they must go to animal feed stores. It is time that the Department of Defense address the issue of the treatment of this disease. But as VA doctors tell us, you can't treat a disease that the Pentagon says doesn't exist. The evidence exists. Not only are our troops sick, but now their families are suffering. They have the same symptoms, the same diseases. But as late as May 25th of 1994, a memo was released from the Department of Defense from John Shelley Kashvili, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and William Perry, Secretary of Defense, stating the following: there is no information, classified or unclassified, that indicates that chemical or biological weapons were used in the Persian Gulf. However, the Regal report states that on November 10th of 1993, John Deutsch, then Undersecretary of Defense, stated that they were withholding information regarding biological exposures on our troops. The troops are sick, but yet the Pentagon, the CIA, the Department of Defense, and the VA continue to try and tell the American public our troops have mental problems. This previously classified document shows that soldiers were killed with biological warfare. The significance of this document is that the Iraqi soldiers that were killed with biological warfare were located between Baghdad and Basra. Why is this important? Because that was the location of the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne. Many of our Gulf War veterans are sick in those 2 units, and many have died. Just recently, an interim report to Senator Don Regal surfaced. It is dated September 9th of 1993. The title is Gulf War Syndrome, the case from multiple origin, mixed chemical, biotoxin, warfare-related disorders. Most disconcerting in this document is finding that on page 13 it states that out of the 644th Ordnance Company in Alabama, that they had 85 of the 110 soldiers sick with Gulf War illnesses. In other words, 77% of those that served in the 644th Ordnance Company became sick with Gulf War illnesses. There is also an exposure map for January 17th and January 20 of 1991, in which they state there was a chemical exposure from an Iraqi Scud attack. This exposure map shows areas of Kuwait and northern Saudi Arabia that were exposed to chemical weapons. Why is all this important? Is it just Gulf War veterans? Is it just our military? No, the disease has now spread. It has spread into the general population. It is called chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. As a nurse, I am concerned for you. I am concerned for everyone. You see, it is not just the American military, it is the general population. It is also the fact that there were 28 coalition countries that served during the Persian Gulf War. Out of those, we've had reports that 27 of those coalition countries are now ill. 27 out of the 28 have sick or dying Gulf War veterans. Only France does not report sick Gulf War veterans. they did two things differently. They did not immunize, and they gave doxycycline, preventative doxycycline, on a daily basis to their troops. Now, what was it that the French knew that the Americans did not follow through with? And why is it that we're hearing from all of the other countries that now have sick and dying Gulf War veterans? With 27 of the 28 coalition countries now ill, we are concerned about the health of the entire world. In fact, Scientific American in October 1995 had a cover story article regarding the dangers from new viral plagues. Where are they coming from? Why are they hitting us now? And why do we not have treatments for them? The questions that we ask are they genetically altered? Were they DNA recombinant? Are these biological and viral agents that came out of Scud missiles? Are these the result of the Persian Gulf War? In our research of the Gulf War illness, we found that codified into law, there is a regulation that allows the testing of biological and chemical agents on the American people. It is Title 50, Chapter 32, Section 1520. All that it requires is the notification of civilian authorities that the testing is to be done. It does not allow for permission of the American public. We are again the unwitting American public in experiments. We want the experiments stopped. Gulf War veterans are not being allowed to testify before Congress. I had asked to testify before Representative Shea's committee hearings. I had asked to see my own representative, Tom DeLay, but was not allowed. And I received a letter from a Gulf War veteran showing that I had already testified in a hearing in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania before our inspectors committee. However, it's not true. I was not asked to testify, nor did I testify. Senator Jay Rockefeller's office stated that in a phone call to a Gulf War veteran, that Joyce Riley was asked to testify, but she was too busy. That is not true. I have not been asked to testify. Gulf War veterans want their side of the story told. We want treatment. As a nurse, that is my concern. Treatment for our Gulf War veterans and stopping the spread of a communicable illness. But what is being done for Gulf War veterans? I received a newspaper from Britain recently in which it states that the U.S. Defense Department has increased its budget for burials of Gulf War veterans. I received a news release or a memo from the Secretary of Defense stating that they did not want documents appearing on the internet which seemed to confirm the use or detection of nuclear, chemical, or biological agents, and they did not want documents containing releasable information that could embarrass the government or the Department of Defense. America, it is time that we do more than embarrass the Department of Defense. Our men and women are sick. They need help. We ask your support as we take our case to the American people. Their only crime is being willing to die for this country. We need your help. We need your support. Gulf War veterans, we want you to contact us at the American Gulf War Veterans Association, 3506 Highway 6 South, number 117, Sugar Land, Texas, 77478-4401. We will send you a video and a document package. You need to know that there are those that care. Your country has not turned its back on you. There are some people within the government that do not want this information out, but there are those that care. We will help you in any way that we can. Our phone number is 1-800-231-7631. For those of you who are not Gulf War veterans, please contact us. And if you can help us with a donation, we would like to provide you with this information so that you can copy it and get it out. America, you must know the other side of the story. We will not stop in seeking treatment and justice for our American military.
Florida 130, lying so far away. By the time we're unloading, it'll be the next day. Got a job from my country, Saddam's invasion to foil, protecting all the Kuwaitis and the free flow of oil. They tell us dangerous days are ahead. There will be weapons used that we'll never see. And so from my own protection, they're gonna give me pills and then inoculate me. Whoa, I'm here to follow my orders and stop this madman Hussein. They tell me he'll use germ warfare, and anyone who would must be completely insane. While the flyboys run sorties, I'm putting on protective clothing from head to toe. My Uncle Sam will protect me because we stand for truth and honor, that's what I know. A celebration of victory, congratulations by phone. Returning home on a transport, and yellow ribbons are shown. People say I'm a hero, people shaking my hands. My family throws me a party, balloons and rock and roll bands. Yeah, yeah. But nowadays I feel tired, night I perspire. I've always got this damn headache. My eyes feel like they are always on fire. I've got this rash on my body, and I notice that it's growing bigger each day. I'm always sick to my stomach, and there's no satisfaction living day to day. Oh. My wife said we'd have a baby, and when I found out I smiled. The happiest time in my life, to find I'd father a child. I'm decorating the nursery, I feel like tooting my horn. And on the blessed morning, my little boy was stillborn. No, no, no. They say it's psychosomatic. They say it's all in my head. I tried to contact my buddies, and several of them are dead. I looked for help from the VA. I got the big run around. I'm always looking for answers, but only question after question is found. No, George Bush, Jim Baker, Brent Scowcroft, where do you fit in the scene? You claim you're out of the loop, but I have got suspicions that your hands are not clean. Now General Schwarzkopf gives lectures, and Colin Powell signs his book. If there's a chance you were paid off, I wonder how much it took. No. Tuned in a radio broadcast, and Captain Riley was there. Reports from Senator Regal showed me there's people who care. I thank the Nicholson doctors for helping show us the way. There's guys on doxycycline getting treatment each day. Yeah, yeah. Overseas, it's the front page. British regimental troops are dropping like flies. And the American networks are all ignoring international cries. I don't know where this is going. I don't know where this will end. But now I'm on medication. My strength's returning, and again I'll defend. Apparent forces at work from within will expose them one by one, name by name. With the hell that we've been through, if there is any justice, they will suffer the same. Yes, don't turn your back on your veterans. We're only seeking what is honest and fair. Where are all those yellow ribbons? I wonder where are all those voices that care?